Chapter 9. Malone didn't notice them when he first entered the terminal. He wasn't expecting danger here. The first thing that seized his attention was the colorful array of many nations' flags on the glass-walled balcony atop the escalator. The second was the bustling crowd and its noise. Scores of people waiting for relatives and friends to come through customs filled the large, high-ceilinged chamber. The sibilant French of tall, elegant black women from Haiti, the staccato dialogue of two knots of earnest Koreans, the laughter of a cheery Colombian family, and the hard-edged syllables of a cluster of young Swedes collided with the rhythms of Russia and the loud nasal tones of New York. The Dixie drawl of four well-fed executives in boots and wide-brimmed cowboy hats, and the pulsing Yiddish of a dozen Hasidic Jewish men in traditional black fedoras added to the cosmopolitan wall of sound. Only a handful of bored-looking limousine service drivers, each clutching a small sign bearing the name of those they'd come to meet, stood silent in the milling throng. A few moments after Malone walked into the building, he paused beside the information booth on his left to take a cigar from his jacket. Standing beneath a big, multicolored Calder mobile hanging from the roof, he lit the dark Corona and puffed on it. He still didn't see them. Then his restless policeman's eyes swept the crowd again. There they were. Two of them were chatting only a few yards from him. Wearing what looked like a Sony Walkman headset, another loitered in front of the ground transportation counter. A fourth, near the elevator, was attired in the visored cap and dark suit of a chauffeur. 4? There had to be more than that. They took no chances. There must be others whom he didn't know lurking nearby, all armed and ready to strike. There could be shooting here very soon. Glad that his daughter would arrive at another terminal, Malone zigzagged his way to the escalator. According to the instructions he'd received, these moving metal steps were the most direct way to hit his rendezvous in the control tower. When Malone got off the escalator, he recognized another one of them 20 yards away. The barrel-chested man in his 40s scanning the throng below was Thomas Jefferson Gill, head of the New York City office of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. The four plainclothes operatives whom Malone had spotted downstairs worked for Gill, and T.J. Gill didn't come out to Queens in snowstorms for minor busts. It had to be something big, a major dope ring. Gill was speaking with a neatly dressed brunette in her early 30s who had to be another agent. They looked like a typical middle-class couple from the suburbs, not federal police. The glossy Bloomingdale's shopping bag that she carried was a nice touch. It probably concealed a walkie-talkie and a stubby Ithaca Model 37 stakeout shotgun, Malone calculated as he approached them. He stopped a yard away. He didn't face them directly. "How's it going, TJ?" he asked softly. Gill warily turned his head 3 inches, recognized Malone out of the corner of his eye, and looked away again. "What the hell are you doing here?" he challenged in an irate whisper. "Just passing through. Something going down?" "Something federal. Goodbye, Malone." Then a surge of sound from below made them glance down at the ground floor. Flanked by the Hasidim and 4 other men holding up large pictures of an old woman, U.S. Senator Joseph Bono stood talking with a tall man and a woman in an ankle-length fur coat. A pair of teenagers and a boy of 9 or 10 fidgeted beside them, and a platoon of newspaper and wire service reporters and photographers leaned forward to listen. Half a dozen radio correspondents were thrusting their microphones towards the senator. 2 television news crews were setting up their equipment, and a third was pushing closer through the crowd. Now another TV news team hurried in through the front door. Startled, Gill shook his head in silent anger. Malone recognized the photo that the Hasidim held, but decided there would be no point in telling the DEA executive that the senator and media mob were here to witness the poignant return of the Kiev grandma and her US relatives. Gill wouldn't care. Whatever their reasons, their presence was an added complication that Gill didn't need. They might spook the mule or those who came to meet the dope courier. They might inadvertently obstruct the surveillance or arrest of the key drug dealers. They might even be taken as hostages or, caught in the line of fire, shot. In any of a dozen ways, they could wreck a delicate and important DEA operation that involved thousands of man and women hours and great personal risk. Jesus. Gill sighed urgently. It was difficult to tell whether it was an appeal or an imprecation. Frank Malone didn't have the time to ask. "See you," he said, and walked away quickly to the right. He turned past a cluster of bored people watching small coin-operated television sets bolted to their plastic chairs. They were killing time. Malone wondered why they didn't appreciate how precious it was, how little of it they had. Then he realized that he was thinking about death again. He often did when it snowed. Now he reached the glass door to the open bridge that linked the 1,000,000 square feet of the sprawling 3-story International Arrivals building to the 45 by 60-foot control tower that was the highest structure at the airport. Capped by a radar dome, it was nearly 4 times as high as the adjacent terminal. When Malone strode from the warmth out onto the storm-swept span, his pace accelerated immediately. It didn't slow until he reached the well-heated lobby of the tower. "Can I help you?" The uniformed security guard in the booth asked alertly. "I'm supposed to meet Lieutenant Hamilton of the Port Authority Police in Mr. Wilbur's office. My name's Malone." The guard glanced at a clipboard on his desk. "Can I see some ID?" he asked. Malone produced his gold badge and NYPD card. "Okay, 6th floor, Captain. Elevator's back there." There was a list of the tower's tenants on the wall beside the elevator door. Every floor was occupied by some unit of the Federal Aviation Administration, but there was no indication of where the air traffic controllers worked. That was almost surely a security precaution, Malone reasoned. The fewer people who knew the precise location, the better. That was simply common sense, he reflected, as he got into the elevator car. There really wasn't much chance that anyone would attempt to storm the controller's facility. There had to be more security systems or guards upstairs, and there must be alarms to summon the well-equipped Port Authority police, who maintained a strong force on the airport itself. While the FAA handled air traffic and safety, the joint Port Authority created by the states of New York and New Jersey took care of security as the overall operator of the 3 major local airports. The guard had phoned up from the lobby. When Malone emerged from the elevator at the 6th floor, 2 men walking down a short corridor hurried towards him. They appeared to be in their 40s. One was about 5 feet 10 inches tall, 15 to 20 pounds overweight, and smiling. His features suggested one or more Irish ancestors. The other man was bigger and harder. Wide-shouldered and muscular, he stood 6 feet 4, and there wasn't an ounce of fat on him. He was black, sharp-eyed, and handsome. There wasn't anything resembling a smile on his face. His expression was cool and impersonal. "My name's Malone. Is Lieutenant Hamilton here?" "I'm Hamilton," the powerfully built deputy commander of JFK's Port Authority Police replied. This is Pete Wilbur. Welcome to the Kennedy Tower, the smaller man said. He runs it, Hamilton announced. Wilbur took a leatherette case from his shirt pocket, extracted a business card, and gave it to Malone. Peter O. Wilbur was the air traffic manager for the Federal Aviation Administration here. His address was Kennedy Control Tower, JFK International Airport, Jamaica, New York, 11430. There was a phone number that Frank Malone guessed was unlisted. He was right. Thanks, Malone told him. Sorry I'm late. Hamilton ignored the apology. Let's get to it. As you know, primary responsibility for security at Kennedy belongs to the Port Authority. He reminded in a casual blunt assertion of territory. But other government agencies are involved. We always cooperate fully, and of course, we expect them to do the same. Malone managed not to smile at the barely disguised warning. Of course, he agreed and puffed on the cigar. Then his eyes wandered to a nearby desk. There's an ashtray in my office, Wilbur said. When they were seated in the FAA executive's large room at the end of the corridor, Frank Malone tapped the ash from his Corona and Hamilton resumed the briefing. We think our security procedures are good. We know they're probably not perfect. At the very least, there's always the question of human error. Will somebody get bored or careless? Will someone panic? Malone nodded in approval. Hamilton's style was a bit abrasive, but he was a realistic professional. So you run tests, Malone reasoned. Yeah, that's what we wanted to talk to you about, Hamilton answered as Wilbur took a cigar from his desk drawer. The Port Authority lieutenant glared when Wilbur lit it. This is my turf, Ben, Wilbur reminded cheerfully. Tell him about the test. Hamilton opened a window several inches before he continued. After every security test, we do a critique. We've been through a number of them, and maybe a fresh set of eyes and a new mind might notice something we don't. We'd like you to come to the next critique session. Sure, when is it? I don't know, Hamilton said. We never get advanced warning about when or what the test will be. The folks in Washington call the plays, Wilbur explained. Some bright people in the FBI and FAA figure out a clever stunt and spring it on us. Could be a simulated hijacking, a multiple hostage situation, sabotage of the fuel trucks, or 10 other things. I think there might be one coming soon, Hamilton said. It's about time, the FAA tower chief agreed. Every major US airport catches 1 or 2 a year. We haven't had any for 7 months, so they could drop a test on us at any minute. Tonight? Malone asked. I doubt they'd spring one in this weather, Wilbur replied. They've got the people and equipment to handle a storm with no great sweat, but Washington knows we wouldn't want any extra problems on a messy night like this. Frank Malone's eyes narrowed in concern. Something bothering you, Captain? Hamilton questioned. My daughter's flying in from LA in that storm right now. Nothing to worry about, Wilbur assured. A whole army of highly skilled people has been working on her flight from before it even took off. They're first class, and so's the hardware. Our navigational and air traffic control gear is the most sophisticated in the world. It's an all-weather system, Captain, and a damned good one. Now Hamilton rose to his feet and waved away a spiral of offending cigar smoke. "Then it's all set. I'll phone you when we schedule the next critique," he said. "Is there anything else to discuss before I go?" Wilbur shook his head. "I've got a question. No, two," Malone said. "Am I right that there's never been a major attack on an American airport by a team of professional terrorists?" "Not yet," Hamilton answered evenly. "What's the other question?" "What kind of weapons do you have here to deal with such a raid?" "Handguns, shotguns, and submachine guns. There's an armored car, too." "Tear gas? Masks? Bulletproof vests?" Hamilton nodded. "Is there any special reason you're asking, Captain?" he questioned slowly. "I wasn't reflecting on your planning," Malone told him. "I was thinking about a warning that came in from the FBI today. They've heard a rumor that some foreign terrorist group may hit the US mainland with a major operation." "Soon?" the big Port Authority lieutenant asked. "Very soon. It's just a rumor, but they've killed a lot of people at airports abroad. I don't suppose an attack on a US airport would be entirely out of the question, would it?" "Not entirely," Hamilton answered in a voice edged with irony. "You're a very tactful man, Captain." "Thanks, Lieutenant. I'll be waiting for your call." Hamilton didn't answer. He departed without saying a word, and Malone turned to the FAA executive behind the desk. "He's a very good cop," Wilbur said in answer to the unspoken question. Then Malone looked at his wristwatch. It was 10 minutes to 8. "My daughter's plane lands in 14 minutes, if it's on time." "Well, we can check on that upstairs," Wilbur suggested. "It'll only take a couple of minutes, and you'll get an overall view of the airport." "Okay," Malone agreed. "It's TWA Flight 22 from Los Angeles." Walking to the elevator, Wilbur began to talk about how the US air traffic control system worked. "It's a very careful handoff operation, high tech and high skill. When your daughter's plane got near the edge of the area our Los Angeles center has under radar control, it was handed off to the Denver or Albuquerque center, depending on which route it took. Then more handoffs from center to center as it flew east. There's also a network of navigational radio stations to help the pilot keep to the flight plan he filed in LA before being cleared to take off." "Sounds good," Malone said as Wilbur pushed the elevator button. "Good won't cut it. It has to be just about perfect, all the way. When her plane was about 100 miles from here, it was handed off to New York Center. That's out on Long Island near Islip. It controls the metropolitan area's 3 biggest airports: JFK, LaGuardia, Newark." The elevator arrived. They entered, and Wilbur poked the button marked 8. "New York Center's job is to bring the plane in to about 50 miles from here," Wilbur continued. "At that point, Flight 22 will be handed off to the Tracon at Westbury." "The what?" "Sorry, Captain. Tracons are acronym for Terminal Radar Approach Control. You asked about attacks on airports. Well, you can rest easy about the Tracon. Armed guards, wire fences, alarms. Nobody's going to try anything there." The elevator door opened. "Going back to your daughter," Wilbur said as they stepped out. "The Tracon team will direct her plane. Direction, altitude, speed, to within 6 miles or so of Kennedy. Then our controllers in this tower guide it down to the right runway, direct it to the appropriate taxiway off the runway, and shepherd it to a full stop on the apron at the TWA terminal. The FAA veteran pointed to the nearby stairway. "Come on," he invited. "You can see for yourself." Malone followed him up 2 flights of steps to a metal door. "Security," Wilbur said curtly. He inserted a plastic card containing coded circuits into the electronic lock, and the heavy portal opened. Then they ascended 10 more steps to the command post for the 5,000-acre airport's air traffic control. "We call this the cab," Wilbur told him. The large room had 8 sides, each with 2 big windows made of 1/4-inch thick, double-wall, tinted anti-glare glass. Though the falling snow reduced visibility somewhat, Malone could scan the wraparound panorama of runways, taxiways, parked aircraft and hangars, terminals and other buildings. He noticed 3 multi-jet transports, their wing and tail lights blinking insistently in the black winter night, lined up on a taxiway awaiting takeoff clearance. Another was swooping in to land. On a different runway off to the left, a 5th airliner was touching down. Now Frank Malone's eyes swung around the chamber in which he was standing. The decor was Federal functional. The black fiberboard ceiling was punctuated with air ducts to suck out tobacco smoke. Cocoa-colored plastic wastebaskets dotted the well-worn brown-orange carpet that spread wall to wall. A cluster of telephones hung on wall brackets beside a water cooler. On the far side of the comfortably heated room were 2 teleprinters, silent for the moment. At the high desk near them, a dark-haired woman, facing away from Malone, was busy on another phone. She stood straight in well-tailored slacks, her posture radiating strength and energy. Men noticed that figure and presence, Frank Malone thought. There were 8 more people, 7 male and 1 female, working in the cab. Several of them were facing the 4 radar sets. Most of the controllers sat on brown plastic swivel chairs, but others in the cab preferred to stand. Their attire was informal and comfortable, not a jacket in sight. Jeans and corduroy pants, sports shirts and turtlenecks, running shoes and loafers seemed to prevail. In a white shirt, suit and tie, Wilbur was clearly an outsider as he spoke into a phone on the other side of the room. Those studying the green radar screens wore ultralight headsets with miniature microphones built into the ends of thin white plastic tubes no thicker than soda fountain straws. The whole rig attached to expandable accordion-like wires connected to consoles before them. The controllers' ages appeared to range between 26 and 40. Some looked like solid suburbanites. One lean young controller with longer hair and a floral-printed shirt didn't. He had the cool, taut air of a savvy rock guitarist rather than that of a civil service technician. There was no tension or worry in these faces, just total concentration. They were working swiftly and deftly, and they knew exactly what they were doing. The storm might be adding pressure to their work, but it certainly wasn't intimidating them. Malone felt better watching them in action. Listening was something else. The controllers at the radar screens were all talking, very fast. They squirted out gusts of words and puzzling phrases in startling sing-song eruptions. Watching Wilbur speak on the phone across the room, Frank Malone tried to understand what the balding controller a yard away from him was saying. It wasn't easy. "Eastern 18 heavy, turn right, taxi via Zulu and hotel. Hold short of 22 right and remain on this frequency." Malone had no time to decode this. The controller seated a yard away was pouring out more instructions at a startling pace. American 35 cleared to land. Runway 22 left. Empire 92 would appreciate first available turnoff after landing, please. United 52, wind 20014, gust 19. Cleared for takeoff. Clipper 563 Heavy, caution. Wake turbulence departing. Heavy jet runway 22 right. Now Wilbur hung up the phone and started towards Malone. The controller whom the detective had been listening to was still machine gunning instructions into his microphone. His colleagues at the other radar sets were also speaking very quickly and constantly, providing a seamless curtain of background sound. "All right, gentlemen," the controller beside Malone said briskly into his microphone as Wilbur approached. "Everyone waiting for departure clearance on 2390 can monitor 119.1. He's telling them to shift radio frequencies," Wilbur said. "No problem with your daughter's flight. Transworld 22 Heavy shouldn't be more than a few minutes late." Malone sighed in relief before he asked the question. Heavy? A jumbo. 747 or DC-10 or L-1011, like the one your daughter's on. Now, what do you think of the cab, Captain?" "I've never heard anyone talk so fast." "There's no choice," Wilbur told him. "All the major airports handle a tremendous volume of traffic, and it's growing. We're responsible for those planes in the air and on the ground. We've got 9 miles of runway and 22 miles of taxiways to supervise, in addition to what's flying. It takes a ton of directions to cope with all of that, so both controllers and pilots have to speak quickly to avoid frequency saturation." "I suppose that shorthand they talk helps." Wilbur nodded and gestured towards one of the radar sets. "Yeah, so does the hardware," he said. "We've got airport surveillance radar to monitor what's flying within 30 miles of here, airport surface detection radar to control what's moving on the ground, instrument landing systems, approach lighting systems, and a lot of other gear. And we've got damn good professionals to work it." Now he saw the trim woman at the desk hang up the phone. "First-class supervisors, too," he continued. "I'd like you to meet the watch supervisor who runs this shift. Smart, fast, cool. Nothing ever bothers her. Annie, could you spare us a minute?" She turned at the same time that Malone did. She took 2 steps towards them and stopped. Wilbur immediately realized that he was wrong about his watch supervisor. Something was bothering her right now, and it wasn't anything small. He'd never seen her like this before. She was staring at Frank Malone. She seemed to be very angry.